Okay, hello. Welcome to the Go Abroad Fund pre-departure session. My name is Randall. I'm the one who's been sending out all the emails and everything, so you've probably heard from me plenty by now. First of all, I'd just like to congratulate you. We had about 1,130 applications for the Principals Go Abroad Fund, and out of those, we were able to give only a little bit over 300. So competition was really fierce, as you might be aware. So congratulations. What I'm going to do today is just go through some information that we have to give to you before we can sign off on your project, and then there'll be some time for questions afterwards. So let's go ahead and get started. So just quickly, a little bit before you go, some stuff while you're there, and then what we expect of you when you return. So this theme will be running throughout my entire presentation today. Basically, the more preparation you do at the moment, the easier it will be when you arrive. The better time you'll have, the more you'll be able to get out of your activity. That's because it's so much easier to do that preparation now when you're still, you're still in Edinburgh or you're at home and you have access to all your documents and you're safe, you're secure, everything like that. So do make use of this time before you actually leave to get as much stuff done as you can in case you do have to deal with some issue when you're abroad. So first, I'm just going to touch briefly on the documents that we require from you. I'm aware that some of you might have already completed these, but I'm going to go through these for those of you who haven't. The risk assessment form is very important. It's important for you, and it's also important for us. So for you, it's a chance to do some of the research, get an idea of the things that you might be facing, some of the health and safety issues, some of the possible risks, and then it lets you think about some ways that you might go about trying to reduce these risks. It's not just a thing that needs to be completed to tick a box. It's very important, and like I said, it's also important for us. It's actually what we use to decide whether we can support your activity or not. So if we don't have enough information on that form, we can't adequately make a decision, and what I'll do is ask you to provide more information, and all of this will just slow down the process. So it's important, if you haven't finished that yet, to take the time that it requires. It shouldn't be very long. You can get the information from the FCO website, take an hour or two, and fill it out to the best of your ability, so that you can submit it, and the process can go smoothly. There shouldn't be. I'll talk a little bit on the next slide about some of the more particular things, but really throughout the whole thing, there shouldn't be any blank boxes left. If there are things that don't apply to you, like medical conditions or something, that's fine. But when it's asking you for information on risks, things like that, there shouldn't really be any blank boxes, no matter where you're going. The insurance policy is, as you should be aware by now, the university offers its travel insurance to everyone who is receiving funding, and it's up to you to decide whether to take it or not. If you already have something in place and you decide not to, that's fine, but it's your responsibility to make sure that you have adequate coverage. And I'll talk a little bit more about the insurance policy in a little bit, but you won't actually have received any kind of information about the insurance until you've ticked the box in mobility that says you would like to accept the university's insurance. The indemnity form is pretty simple. It's just an agreement between yourselves and the university. Just make sure you have a look at it, tick the boxes, sign it, upload it, and just make sure that you actually do that. I have had several already that have been uploaded blank, or they've been missing a signature, and in that case, I've had to chase down the person and get them to complete it, and all that just takes more time. The bank details section is also obviously very important. That's how we'll actually transfer the funding to you. We did have a little bit of issues the other day, but that should all be sorted now. Just make sure when you're putting in the bank details that you put them in accurately and you put in the right information. So for first of all, you should have a UK bank account. Then all we basically need is the name of the bank, the account number, so that should be 8 digits, and the sort code, which should be 6 digits. Just make sure that double check when you put it in that it's the right thing, because if it's not, again, I'll have to chase you up and get the right information. Same thing goes for the dates. I'll talk a little bit about this, I think, when I talk about insurance, but just make sure when you're putting in your dates the second time that you're very, very accurate with them. I've already had to do it several times, going in and changing dates. It's not. I don't mind doing it. I'm happy to do it if something comes up, but it is something that just takes a little bit of extra time that you could avoid by making sure that you put in the right dates the first time. And the final checklist is just that. It's the last thing that you need to complete before you are able to, before we transfer the funding to you. It's just a list, and you tick the boxes and click submit. So let me just show you really quickly there. So this is one page from the risk assessment, but this is probably the most important page. This is what I was saying. There really shouldn't be any blank boxes left at all. It doesn't matter if it's a country that's considered relatively safe, or even if you're going to, if you're actually a citizen in that country. Still, from the university's perspective, we need to know that you have thought about all the possible risks. So if I see, if I see any blank boxes, odds are I'll probably contact you and ask you to provide some more information. And that goes for the first page as well, where it asks if there are any specific advice from the FCO. Just make sure, like I said at the beginning, just take the time that it requires to do it right the first time, and then you won't have to really worry about it any after that. So the documents to take with you is pretty straightforward. You'll have heard this stuff from all over the place. Obviously, you need a passport with a valid visa. Everybody's going to different places, doing different things. Obviously, all these countries have different requirements for visa things. So it's your responsibility to be aware of what kind of visa you need and what kind of process you need to go through to get that. Whether you need some extra time on your passport after your visa expires, all that stuff is up to you to figure out. The pre-departure guide should have been sent out about a week ago. Hopefully you all got that. That will have some of this information that I'm going to present today, and also some handy contact details and stuff like that. So it's a good idea to just keep a copy of that somewhere. If you're taking your computer, just make sure you have a PDF copy of it somewhere that you can access easily. We suggest that you have another kind of photo ID. We don't recommend that you use your passport as a form of ID, because passports are a lot more difficult to replace. Yeah, I see there's a hand up. I'm going to take questions at the end. Passports are so much more difficult than other forms of ID to replace, like a driver's license or something like that. So we would recommend that you have some other form of ID to carry with you around on your person. And then at the bottom, obviously, make scans of your important documents, but also make several copies of these scans. Take the documents themselves with you, as well as some scans of them. Also, leave some scans back at home with a family member or a friend. All of this will just make it a little bit easier in case something does happen, like you lose your passport and you need the information, you need the passport number, all that stuff. Okay, so the main thing to keep in mind when you're actually arriving into the country is that this is the time when you're most vulnerable. So just keep that in mind. You're getting into a new place. You've just probably come off a long flight. You're tired. You're loaded down with all your luggage. So that's actually the most vulnerable time. So that's probably not the best time to stop and take out your phone and contact your family or contact your friends. We would recommend that you wait until you get to somewhere where you can be a little bit more secure, a little bit more relaxed, and then by all means, let your family know, let your friends know that you've arrived safely. Again, like I said, everybody's doing different things, so we can't really provide the kind of detailed information that you might need. But a lot of people are doing things where they have some kind of host organization. It might be if you're doing, volunteering or an internship or something like that, or summer school. So we would recommend that you attend all and any of the sort of induction sessions that these organizations might have. These will be able to offer you the best detailed advice for actually what you're doing and the country that you're in, the area that you're in. Another important point here is to keep an eye on your Edinburgh email account. This is the primary form of contact that we will use in case there's anything, if there's any issues with your application or risk assessment or anything. This is how we will contact you. And I'm aware that sometimes you might not have great access to emails. That's fine, but when you do get a chance, if it's every few days or every week or whatever it is, just do take 5 minutes to check your email account and see if there's any contact from us. Okay, so the banking information is pretty straightforward. You probably are aware of all this. Make sure your bank knows that you'll be traveling and that they know where you'll be traveling. This is really easy to do, but it's also quite easy to forget to do. So a lot of times it's just an online form. You just tell them where you're going to be and for how long. Also, check with your bank on what their policy is for replacing any cards that might have been lost or stolen, and you might be able to provide some kind of address for the country that you're in, because we've had cases in the past where a card has been stolen. The bank replaced the card, which was sent to the student's Edinburgh address, which was no help to anybody. So this could just be maybe a half an hour surfing around on your bank's website, seeing if you can find some of this information, seeing maybe send them an email and see if you can contact them regarding some of this information if you haven't already. So I mentioned insurance already a little bit, and I'll also mention it again a little bit later, but it's just for the moment it's just important that you have the right coverage. So this should be travel insurance. And like I said, the university offers its own insurance policy free of charge, but it's up to you, whether you want to take it or not. Yeah, I'll speak more about that in just a minute. Okay, accommodation. Again, everybody is going different places, doing different things. Some of your accommodation will be included. Some of you will be, coordinating your own accommodation. Some of you might even be camping out in the wilderness. So you're going to be the best person who can deal with this some of this stuff. But we just have a few pieces of advice. For one, just be informed. Do your research. Do as much research as you can before you go. Figure out the area that you'll be staying in. What kind of if you're staying in a relatively big city, what kind of facilities will you have near you, amenities, things like that. What kind of neighborhood will you be staying in? If you are coordinating your own accommodation, we would recommend that you avoid websites like Gumtree, where there's no real accountability or responsibility or anything like that. make sure that you're going through some kind of source that is credible, that you can follow up with the people if something goes wrong. And most importantly, no matter what you're doing, where you're staying, if you do all this research and you get there and you don't feel comfortable or you don't feel safe, find out a way to move, because it's not worth it just sticking it out for a week or a month just because you don't want to deal with the trouble. It will really impact the way your whole experience. So do find a way to get yourself out of that situation if you're not comfortable. Okay, I'll just speak a few minutes about culture shock. I know that probably quite a few of you have traveled before, but the number one thing to keep in mind about culture shock is that it happens to almost everybody, and it happens almost every time you travel too. It doesn't matter if you're a seasoned world traveler. If you go somewhere new, you're gonna probably experience some kind of culture shock. The best thing to keep in mind is that this is perfectly normal. It happens to everybody. So if you can, if you have a few days maybe before you really start getting into your activity, take it easy on yourself. Maybe try to do something that do some kind of activity that reminds you of home, or even maybe you're able to talk with somebody, family or family member or friend from back home, and just don't beat yourself up too much. In the first few days. Like I said, it normally passes quickly, but keep in mind, as a student at the University of Edinburgh, you still have access to all of the support services. That includes us at Edinburgh Global, counseling services, all that stuff. So if you do need to talk to anybody, just get in touch. You can get in touch with them directly. You can get in touch with us. We can put you in touch with them. Just keep that in mind, that you do have support behind you from the university. I'm not really gonna talk too much about the sort of strategies and conceptions of culture shock. You can get a lot of this stuff online if you're interested, and there'll be a lot of good studies that have been done that will be much better than what I can provide you. But this is just one way that people have thought about culture shock, and it's in this four-stage structure. You have the first part where it's the honeymoon period. You get to the new place, and everything's new. It's exciting. It's fun. You're meeting new people. You're eating new foods, doing new things. Everything's a great time. And then that usually lasts for maybe a few days, and then you get to the point where you have to actually do something in the country. Maybe you've had to go to your first day at your internship, and you realize you have to communicate with people. You have to navigate around the culture, and then that's usually where this second stage comes in, where you actually realize how different it is from your home culture. And you might be a little bit homesick. You also might be a little bit not quite hostile, but you're very conscious of the differences. But that passes quickly as well. And you learn that you actually can communicate with people, and you also learn that a lot of people are much more willing than you think to help communicate with you as well. And you get to this third stage where you can look back a little bit on this, on the trouble that you had, and smile, because now you're able to do most of what you want to do. And then before you know it, you'll be back home, and especially with these summer activities, short-term things, you'll be home probably quite a lot before you actually want to be. And do just keep in mind that reverse culture shock does exist, and it also happens even on these short-term experiences. Even if you're going somewhere for a week, you'll get really into the sort of routine and rhythm of that, and then coming back to Edinburgh or going back home, it could be just as as tough to sort of get back into that former routine. Okay, so health and safety tips that I'm going to go through, these are all common sense things. Basically, the same things that you do here to keep yourself safe, you're going to want to do wherever you're going. Like things like not flaunting your valuables. Being aware if you have a nice camera, be aware of where it's at all times. Is it in your backpack? Is it on your shoulder? Is it dangling loosely in your hand? Just be aware of the things that you have around you. If you have if you take your laptop in your backpack with you, make sure you're aware of where your backpack is at all times. Generally try to maintain awareness of your surroundings. That is the best way you can avoid sort of unsafe situations. I already mentioned not carrying your passport around with you. If you have somewhere safe in your room, or if you have a safe, actually, that's probably the best place to keep it. Just because, again, it's really difficult to replace passports. We're not going to tell you not to go out at night alone or not to drink alcohol, but if you do these things, you're going to just make sure that you are maintaining awareness, even more so than in any normal situation. And we would recommend that you wait to do these things until you've got a little bit of a lay of the land and you know kind of where you're going, the route home, and hopefully some of the people that you're with. And the last point is really the most important. It's similar to the one with the accommodation. If you're in some sort of situation where you feel uncomfortable or you feel unsafe, get yourself out of that situation as quickly as possible. Don't worry about offending somebody. Ultimately, it's your own health and safety that you have to be in charge of. So it's not worth it to try to just suffer through some very unsafe situation because you don't want to offend the people that you're with. So this is just a few examples of where you can get some information. I'm sure most of you have already done a lot of this research. Some of the best places are government websites, and some of them have travel advice websites. Also the FCO, which is on the next slide. You should hopefully have already used that a little bit for for filling out your risk assessment if you've done that. We also have our own blog, which I have a link to in one of the later slides. If you haven't gone there yet, it's really worth a look because, like I'll mention at the end, what we require as part of the funding is that you submit some kind of blog about your trip. So that means we have these from previous recipients, and the blog is searchable, so you can go on there and you could look up the country that you're going to, or even the the organization that you're using or something, and you might find somebody who's done something similar, who's gone somewhere to a similar place, and it could give you an idea of what you have in store. We also have this Facebook group. It's a closed group. It's for students only. You can follow this link and request to join, and we'll let you in. And then what it is for all students who are taking part in an international experience. This includes year-long exchanges, Erasmus, but also Go Abroad Fund students. So, and then you can talk to your fellow students. So what we have a lot of people do is, they say, hey, is anybody going to, Australia? And then, a few people answer, yeah, where are you going to be? And then a lot of people actually get in touch using this, and you might even be able to get in contact with somebody who might be doing something similar at the same time that you're doing it. Like I said, FCO website should hopefully you've probably already seen this or been aware of it. It's a good place. Their reports on each country are very concise. It's a good place to get some information. So I've already covered important documents for the most part. Like I said, again, just it's a good idea to keep copies in more than one place, including with you, and also back home or in Edinburgh or somewhere else that's a safe place. Make sure you have your emergency contact details. This could vary for different people. It could be um, your own emergency contact, whether that's a family member or a friend, but also details for your embassy. So that depends on what your nationality is. Emergency services for the country that you're in. So again, that will vary depending on where you're at. And we also have a emergency phone number, which I'll show you in one of the later slides. Okay, since these are short-term experiences, you shouldn't have to worry too much about medication. Hopefully you can take what you need with you and not have to deal with trying to get more when you're there. If you do have to do this, make sure you visit your doctor in plenty of time. And also, if you are taking a lot of medication through customs, border control, it's a good idea to have a letter from your doctor explaining what that medication is. Okay, I'm going to talk now about the university's travel insurance. Like I said, it's completely optional whether you want to use this or not. But if you decide not to, it is your responsibility to make sure that you are adequately covered. And as you'll see, the university's policy is very, very good one. So this is just a summary of the policy. This is what you'll get with some more information if you accept the university's insurance. As you can see, for medical expenses, which includes emergency evacuation and repatriation, it's unlimited. That's pretty much. I mean, yeah, that's about as good as you can get. The one thing I should point out for loss of damage to personal belongings, as you can see, it's up to 10,000 pounds or a single article of 1,000 pounds. There is a 30-pound excess per claim in that category. But other than that, it's all straightforward. It's really it's a really good policy, and you'll struggle to get one as for cheaply for as good. But if you already have one, then you might as well use it. Okay. It is important to remember that the university's insurance is a travel insurance. It's not a health insurance. So what that means is that it doesn't cover things like regular appointments to the doctors. It covers sort of emergency medical expenses, and this could include also minor emergencies. So if you have to go to the doctor and it's something that's relatively minor that you're able to go in on your own accord, on your own time, you'll probably have to pay the expenses up front yourself. And then what you can do is make a claim to the insurance and be reimbursed for those expenses. If, however, there is a bad emergency medical condition, either for yourself or if you're traveling with somebody who's also receiving funding, it's important after you do all the stuff first, contacting the emergency services. It's important to get in touch with the insurers as soon as possible, because they will actually be able to communicate with the hospital and cover the costs beforehand, so you don't have to put those costs up front, which sometimes these can be, in some countries, they can be quite expensive. For lost or stolen items, the insurance requires that you have a police report for these things, so keep that in mind. It does the travel part of the insurance covers things like transportation, flights, and stuff like that. But that obviously varies. It covers things that are outside of your control. If it's if a flight is bumped or it's canceled or whatever, then it covers things for that. If however you're not allowed on the flight because you don't have the appropriate visa or something like that, then that would be something that the insurance wouldn't cover. And you can get some more information on how to actually complete these claims and the forms themselves from the insurance department. You can go to their website. I will mention now, I don't think there's another chance after this. So for the travel dates, like I said at the beginning, the reason the travel dates are so important are because of this insurance. So the dates that you put in are the dates that you'll be covered for under the insurance. So what that means, but it's not exactly straightforward, because what we're covering is the actual activity that you're doing being supported by the university. So this doesn't cover things like personal holidays. So sometimes some students are maybe going home beforehand, and then they're going to do their activity, and then maybe they're going to meet some friends in another country and do some traveling there. So all we're covering is the actual activity itself. So the dates that you should put in should be the ones that cover this, including the travel dates themselves. So if you're leaving from Edinburgh, going to do your activity, coming straight back to Edinburgh, then you put those dates, including the days that you're actually flying or taking a train or whatever. If on the other hand you're going home, then you include the dates from the time when you're leaving from home to go do your activity, not the time when you're leaving from Edinburgh to go home. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions about that, you can just send me an email. If you think you've put in the wrong dates, that's fine. Just send me an email with the updated dates. These are just a few miscellaneous points regarding the insurance. I already talked about finding how to get replacement cards. Like I said, it's a travel policy. It's not a health policy, so it doesn't cover things like eye tests, dental, stuff like that. But you really shouldn't have to worry about that with only being gone for a few weeks or a couple months. There's no cover for under the medical expenses section for injuries arising from snowboarding. I don't know why that's what the insurance company decided. So if you're doing any snowboarding this summer, you'll have to take out your own policy for that. But as far as I'm aware, it is just snowboarding. They even allow snow skiing. So I've had questions about does it cover things like construction work, stuff like that. As far as I'm aware, it covers pretty much everything that you can do apart from snowboarding. With all the claims, the insurance assumes that you're taking all reasonable care to prevent loss. The insurers have turned down and continue to turn down claims because they consider that that the student hasn't taken the reasonable care. So keep that in mind. It's still ultimately it's up to you to be responsible for your things. We had, that includes students leaving their phone on the table when they go to the bar to get a drink and it gets stolen, or one unfortunate student who later laptop down on a hob in the kitchen that was still on. Things like this, the insurance will decide most likely that the student hasn't taken the reasonable care, and they'll turn down the claim. So just again, like I said, maintain awareness of yourself, but also of your belongings wherever you're at. Okay, of course, laws and regulations vary all across the world. It'll depend on where you're going, what you're doing. Just be aware of these things if you are planning on doing something that's related to it. So, for example, driving age is one thing that varies quite considerably around the world. So if you're planning on driving, obviously be aware of what the age is, drinking age as well. And keep in mind that some countries have very harsh penalties for what would be considered a minor offense here in the UK. Okay, this is the emergency phone line, like I mentioned. So this is it's a direct phone line for the University of Edinburgh. It is obviously it's 24 hours. You can call it from anywhere in the world, and it doesn't. It can be an emergency. It can be something relatively minor. It's just a one single contact for the university, and they'll either help solve whatever issue you have, or they'll put you in touch with the right people who can. So if you don't have it yet, it's a good idea to jot that number down. And the point down here at the bottom, it's really important. We don't use it very often, but it is important to keep in mind. By being supported by the university, by accepting the funding from the Go Abroad Fund, you're agreeing to follow all instructions from the University of Edinburgh. This mainly applies to things like emergency evacuations. Obviously, it's something that we live with in today's climate. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen sometimes. We have had to evacuate students before in the past. We had students in Cairo in Egypt during the beginning of the Arab Spring, and the university decided that they couldn't adequately support them anymore, so they had to evacuate them. Several students decided that it was too interesting. They were living through history, so they decided not to go. By doing that, they revoked any support from the university, and for Go Abroad Fund students, that would mean returning funding and everything else. So it is part of the agreement between yourselves and us that you will follow any instructions that come from the university. But like I said, it does not happen very often, and we don't expect it to happen. Okay, I'm getting close to the pretty much on the final section of my talk. So this is getting to what we expect of you once you return. Obviously, for short-term experiences, the best thing that we've after doing some of the research we've decided is that we need to focus on the self-reflective aspect of it. Because for longer experiences, it's easy to go and you kind of don't really know what you're doing, but you fall into a rhythm. You get going, you meet people. But for shorter experiences, some of you might be going for only a week, and that can go by really quickly. So the best way to take advantage of that is by being aware of what you want to get out of your experience before you go. And this might include, writing a few things down, a few goals or something like that. That's completely up to you. There's some stuff you can find on our website. This has some suggestions, things you can use. There's a lot of things online, like where you write, 20 words a day or something like that, and it saves them all, and then you can go back and look at what you've written. If you're interested in that, there's plenty of stuff for you. You can go to our page on your story. But what we ask of you is one blog report of what it is that you've done and sort of what you've gotten out of that. And it's not very much. You can see the specifications there. It can be written, it can be photos, it can be video. And for each one, if it's written, 500 words with a couple photos. Photos no more than 15, and videos no more than 6 minutes long. But what this is, it's good for yourselves, and it's also good for us because for you, it's a chance. Like I said, it's a chance to sit down and reflect on what it is you've done. We would expect that you would do this in the few days since returning from your activity. So hopefully, when you're doing it, You're taking photos, maybe you're jotting down some notes, but we're not really expecting you to sit down at any point and work this out. So once you get back, maybe take like an afternoon and just sit down, think about what it is you've done, reflect on, how it's benefited you. Have you grown? Maybe you didn't get much out of it, and that's fine too. And then decide which one of these you want to do, and then you can submit it to us. And it's good for us because then we get to show off basically of what all of our students have done, because you guys go all over the world, do all different kinds of things, and it looks great, and it helps us secure more funding for future awards, so we can continue to increase the number of students that we send out. Like I mentioned, this is the link to the blog. If you haven't looked at that yet, I recommend just spending 10 minutes or so. Maybe type in to search for the country that you're going to, see what comes up. But there's a lot of great blogs on there from people that from last year's recipients. So we've set the date for these to be received as the 8th of September. So this is about a week after your activity should be wrapping up. Like I said, again, we're not trying to get you to do a whole lot of work. We just want you to spend a little bit of time reflecting on what you've done. And of course, in mid-September, classes start again, and everybody gets really busy. So take that little opportunity between coming back and either going back to university or starting your new job or whatever, and just reflect on what you've gotten out of your activity. And keep in mind that no matter what you're doing, no matter where you're going, you are an ambassador for the university, and a lot of times it will be right there next to your name. So just no matter what you're doing, keep that in mind. Act accordingly. And if you do get the chance, promote Edinburgh. So once you're back, like I said, you should be taking a little bit of time to submit your self-reflective blog. We also have our Welcome Home event, which will most likely be in early October, and this is a really fun thing. It's we try to get it in the Playfair Library, and we also try to get the principal himself there. And then we get other people from the university. We get some of our donors. And then, of course, all the recipients from the Go Abroad Fund. And we have canapes, and we have wine, and we have presentations, and we have tables, and it's a good way to, for one, it's a good way to tell people what you've done, because that never really gets old, and you can hear what other people have done as well. We will be having awards for Best Photo, Best Video, and Best Written Expression. I'll send out more information on this later, and you can just submit directly to these categories if you're interested. But just keep this in mind. Before you actually go, it's a good idea. If you decide you want to do a video, then you can make sure that you get the right get the right shots. If you want to do a photo, you get a good photo or whatever. And we'll also be looking for submissions for those, and we'll also be looking for some people to help run some of the tables. So what this will mean is that you help set up one of the tables. Maybe you have some souvenirs or something like that you want to put on there, some pictures that you can put up behind you, and it's just a good chance for you to actually be able to tell people what you've done, because if you're at one of the tables, people come up to you rather than you having to go up to them and try to talk to them. So I'll be looking for some of that later in the summer, but I'll send out more information as we get later into the summer. So I'll just say right now, if you do, we're aware that things change. You applied for this activity at the several months ago. Some things change, dates change, sometimes locations change. If anything changes with your activity, get in touch with me as soon as possible because we'll have to decide what to do. For a lot of cases, if it's a minor change, there won't be any problem. It'll just be updating the details, putting in the new dates, stuff like that. But what sometimes we have is where people get they get the funding to do one thing and then they decide that they want to do something completely different in a different country. In those cases, we'll probably say that you would not be able to do that new activity. This is because you were awarded the funding based on the application for the activity that that you included. So it's not fair for other students who didn't receive funding for then someone who did to just change their mind and do something completely different. But like I said, that's rare cases. For most of the cases, it's absolutely fine. Just do get in touch with me and we can figure out what we need to do. I'm just going to